My name is Robert Martin, and I am a special instructor in the School of Education and Human Services. I'm in the Department of Organizational Leadership, and I am the coordinator for the Master of Education in Educational Leadership. I work with the Central Office certification students and also mentoring and on dissertation committees for EDD and PhD students. I spent 38 years in pre-K-12 education, teaching high school choir in Southfield. I was a high school assistant principal, a middle school principal in Southfield, also a leadership consultant with Oakland Schools, and then a central administrator with Pontiac, West Bloomfield, and then retired from Utica Community Schools. I've been with Oakland U now for 4 years. Personally, I've been married for 40 years. We have 2 adult sons, and I love to travel, I love music, and I love trying out new restaurants. All 3 of those things have been a pandemic's nightmare, but I am adjusting and really trying to do my best with this. So let's get started. Today, we are going to talk about who were we, who are we, and who will we become. I'm interested in looking at the past with who were we, who are we, looking at the present, obviously, and then who will we become, looking at the future and taking into context that we can create the future. And are we going to do this individually or are we going to do this collectively? And what type of future do we want? We're going to look at some popular media and how media reflects culture and differences in the USA. And so this term differences is what I hope that we're really going to focus on and zero into during the next few moments. At the end, I will have some recommendations for us to consider. And then after listening to this recorded presentation, I'm hoping that we will have a time of interaction for some robust questions and back and forth. And I'm really looking forward to that opportunity. The first clip that we're going to look at is from Dead Poets Society. This is an opportunity to look at the past around 1940s, 1950s. Tradition was very much a part of this time. And traditional roles, traditional perspectives. And we're thinking that as you look at this, it's going to be a short clip. I want you to notice who the characters are and maybe who might be missing. So now let's take a look at that clip.
To the muzzles of guns with perfect nonchalance.
Come on, Meeks, listen to the music.
To dance. Clap hands, exalt, shout, skip, roll on, float, on.
Yes.
Oh, to have life henceforth the poem of new joys.
So as you looked at that clip from Dead Poets Society, the gentleman that was encouraging the young boys to kick the ball and to read quotes was the teacher. A very involved teacher, very energetic and very passionate for his content. I particularly love that movie. I find it very inspiring. But did you notice that there were some people missing? There were no females in that clip, and the females in the entire movie play a very secondary role. There was no ethnic variety. There was no racial diversity at all. It was a simpler time. So I'd like to call this time a time of us. It was just about us, my family, my tribe, people who are just like us. This simpler time worked for some, but there were plenty that it didn't work. Economic and population growth perpetuated this myth of stability, and there was growth in the aggregate on average, but it did not happen for everyone. It was very predictable. It felt safe. But this was not everyone, and it was not safe for everyone. If you think back during that time, domestic violence was at an all-time high. Law enforcement was reluctant to get involved. Neighbors were reluctant to get involved. So it was very, very isolating for many and for some. So I'd like for us to think about a different time. Let's look at the present. If you saw Crash, you see a lot of variety in gender. You see the variety in ethnicity and race. But the title Crash implies something different. Let's take a look at the clip.
I'm trying to help you.
I didn't ask for your help, did I?
It's okay, Daddy. I'll protect you.
It's the sense of touch. I think we miss that touch so much that we crash into each other just so we can feel something.
Something else funny? People, man. People.
You see a lot of variety, but a lot of chaos, a lot of complexity. This I'm using as a representation of the present. And I would like to call it the time of me, where we're looking just at me. And if you remember on the clip, it talked about that we're just so busy, we're missing each other. A lack of connection, a lack of authentic and appropriate connecting. This is an interesting time that we're living in. More than ever, we're connected through technology, but more than ever, we are isolated in a very personal and inauthentic way. Because I believe that as human beings, we were created to be in community and to be connecting. So when you're looking at differences, and we look back at Dead Poets Society, even though that was a simpler time, that didn't work. It didn't work for everyone, and it was perceived to be a stable time. You look now, look at this picture of Crash. There's a lot of diversity. There's a lot of differences, but it's not resolved. I do believe that there's a lot of colliding. There's a lot of crashing into each other. It is chaotic. It is unpredictable, and people feel unsafe. It is haphazard. So that, yes, there is an acknowledgement of differences to where in the past, I believe that we felt that there was a bit of mythology. There was a myth that everyone was the same and everyone lived in a home with two-parent families. That was not the reality then. This complexity that we're living in now, there is an acknowledgement that there are differences, but there is not the community and there is not the connection that we need in order to build the society and the future that we're hoping to build. So the question becomes, what now? What's next? And my question to you is, who do we want to become? What is the future that we're wanting to create? I don't know if many of you are aware, but in Great Britain, they created a new ministry post called the Ministry of Loneliness. That they recognized that so many of their citizens, in particular their senior citizens, it crisscrossed across their population, were suffering from loneliness. And that the neighborhood, the church, the synagogue, the mosque, the community center was not responding to this loneliness, that they needed to create a ministry position, a ministry of loneliness. Now, on one hand, I commend Great Britain for doing this, for seeing a problem and for responding to it. But on the other hand, I bemoan the fact that it had to be done. And what does this say about us as human and human nature, that we are so disconnected, that we are colliding and we are crashing into each other, that we are not willing to bridge those differences and to really build the community that needs to be built. So I do have a resolution that I'd like to recommend. So what happens when Dead Poets Society collides with Crash? My recommendation is that you turn to ragtime. I don't know if many of you are aware of the novel by Dak Tao, where he writes, and there are three distinct storylines. There is the middle class, upper class white storyline, there is the African American black storyline, and there is the immigrant storyline. And initially, these individuals collide. But in the end, there is an unexpected resolution that I think has a metaphor that can really be a standard and a guide for us. So for the first clip from Ragtime, I'd like for you to look at, this is part of the prologue, which shows the three groups. So let's take a look. So I've made up a word, simplexity. I think it's taking the good from the simpler times and acknowledging the complexity that we have in the future and looking to the complexity that we have in the present and looking to the future in creating a third way. At this point, we've just been accepting what is. But I believe that we can collectively come together and move toward a third way, a way of coming together and a way of acknowledging differences while maintaining our unique individuality. I am not a proponent of milquetoast or homogeneity, of everyone being the same. I think that's unnatural. I am an insatiably curious individual. My wife says I'm nosy, but I'm going to go with curiosity and inquisitiveness. And I am always interested in meeting new people and learning about them, who they are, what they have to offer. And the variety, the better the variety, the deeper the variety, the more excited I am, the more engaged I am. And I believe that that can be that way for all of us. There is a fear of the unknown. There is a fear of the difference. But I believe that together we can make it work. Now, is it easy? No, it can be messy. Is it always simple? No, it can be complex. But there is a third way that we can embrace and that we can create. I have one more clip that I'd like you to look at, and it is talking about, it's the end of the prologue, but notice the difference in the staging between the three groups, white, black, immigrant, from the first clip, the staging that we saw, to the staging that you'll see in this clip. Let's take a look. I hope that you noticed that in that clip, instead of them encircling each other in fear and trepidation, that they were standing in a straight line. There still was not complete integration, but they were singing more in unison, and just their stance was a more unified stance. So that, in my mind, represents that it's not going to be all hunky-dory and we're not going to all sing Kumbaya tomorrow, but that if we stand together, we will be able to work through our differences and to be able to move forward toward a brighter and stronger future. Look at the pictures on this PowerPoint. Look at the old Ford at the top. That was state of the art in its day. Now look at the Tesla. Who would have imagined back in the 1950s that there would be a hybrid car that would look and operate the way that did? Look at the middle two pictures. At the top is Hattie McDaniel. She was the first African American to win an Oscar. That was amazing. But did you know that the only roles that Hattie McDaniel would ever be offered was to play a maid? That she was never offered any other role. And that when she died, she was initially denied the opportunity to be buried in the Hollywood cemetery where actors and actresses are buried. They have since rectified that situation, but initially she was denied that opportunity. An Academy Award winner. But look at the bottom picture, one of my favorites, Audra McDonald. If you are not aware of this multi-talented individual, she has won 6 Tonys. She had won her 5th Tony by the time she was 30. She has won an Emmy and she's won a Grammy. She is multi-talented, and we have come that far from Hattie McDaniel only being offered roles as a maid to Audra McDonald being the only actor to win 6 Tonys. And it's undeniable, no one denies that she has not earned it, that this was tokenism. So then finally, look at the final set of pictures. That top picture is a picture of the computer that NASA used to propel Apollo to space. The bottom picture is a picture of an iPhone that either an iPhone or something similar to that most of us have either in our pockets or we're looking at right now while I'm talking. The iPhone at the bottom has more computing power than the computer at the top. So look how far we've come. Look how far we've progressed in so many different areas. And I believe that that is possible for us, that we're able to do this same thing in building our community and being able to recognize, acknowledge, and embrace differences within our community and to build a stronger community as we move forward. It's an expansion. It's a welcoming of new voices. So with this complexity, the word that I want to recommend is we. That this is about the we, the broader we. So we're going from just the us to just the me to the we. So a word that I want to introduce to you, bricolage. And the highfalutin research definition is a future constructed out of diverse perspectives and experiences. So let me give you the Martinized definition. That all different voices are welcome at the table. And all different opinions are welcome at the table. And that we are going to build our future together. Look at the picture. That's a quilt. And look at the different colors. You notice each color. There's not one color that's dominant, but they're each valuable, and they each bring out different points and different shades. I showed this to a friend, and he looked and he said, "Oh my goodness, I see a lamppost in one of those squares. And look, there's a bird there in one of the squares." Now it's very interesting because I didn't see what he saw, but I didn't deny that he was seeing that. I think that's part of the different perspectives. One of the things that I love about quilts is that my favorite aunt growing up was a quilter. And she would make quilts for every family member that had a new baby or got married or moved into a new home. She was just prolific in her output of those quilts. And she would just take different pieces of clothing, different pieces of rags that different people gave her, and she would turn those disparate and maybe discarded pieces into something beautiful. She created something beautiful out of it. And I think we can do that. I think we can do that with the different personalities, with the different talents, the different perspectives that we have to offer. I call it a mosaic. It used to be that we called the United States of America a melting pot, and that we melted all the differences into this googob, this glob. And you can tell I don't like that metaphor of the melting pot. Then we went to some were saying, well, we're a salad. Where in a salad you have different parts. You have the lettuce and the cucumbers and maybe the fruit and the dressing and all of the different components. And as you're eating the salad, you're still able to tell the different parts, and they keep their distinctive quality, and they don't all merge into this one thing. I like that one better. But I kind of want to get away from melting and devouring as salad and think of a mosaic. Because in a mosaic, every part is important, and every part maintains its distinct character and contributes to the whole. And I have the word intentional, that we are intentional about inviting new voices to the table and embracing new perspectives. So I do have a couple of recommendations for your consideration. But first, as we're looking at the future, I think media really in a lot of ways introduces us to the future. Look at the bottom picture of Star Trek. That was a while back when the original Star Trek was introduced. Look at the cast. Look a little closer. There is a black woman there. Also, different nationalities, different accents. If you remember Chekhov, and if you remember Scotty, the different accents. But also, there was a being from outer space. Mr. Spock was from Vulcan. They were this menagerie of difference, and they triumphed. They conquered space, and they triumphed with the main directive for Star Trek, a vision of the future. So look at the top picture above that. That is a new Marvel series, The Runaways. Look again at the different individuals. There's a Latina, there's an Asian, there's a black, there's a white man and a white woman. But one of the things that you may not be aware if you've not seen Runaways is that there is a bit of supernatural involvement with them. Many of them have supernatural powers. So that is part of Marvel's Runaway. And I think that is a different vision of the future that reflects very closely to Star Trek. Then look again at across from that. That is Cloak and Dagger, black male, white female. They are best friends. They have supernatural powers, and they support each other. They acknowledge the racial differences, but it is not a major issue in the series. And in the bottom, this is a relative newcomer. You may not be aware of him. This is Remy. He is a Muslim comic that is writing and directing his own series. And it's interesting because it talks about family issues, it talks about religious issues, community issues, how universal the storyline is. There are differences, but at some point, you get to a point where you understand, in acknowledging the differences, you get to a point where you understand the differences don't make a difference. I think in the United States, we want to jump to that point where the differences don't make a difference. We want to be colorblind. We want to just accept each other for who we are. I think that is the ideal. But we have to go through that messy period of acknowledging the differences and acknowledging the different perspectives that we bring before we get to the point of saying the differences really don't make a difference. So, my recommendations for embracing differences. This is the point where I tend to lose people because my first recommendation is reflection. We are not going to be able to really do this heavy lifting without doing some inward work. It's some internal work of reflecting. So that part of who were we and who are we and who will we become, it gets to who am I? What are my beliefs? What are my biases that maybe are not even that explicit to myself? But who do I really want to be? Who is the person that I aspire to be? That really is first before we are able to move forward and build this ideal community. The community that Martin Luther King Jr. referred to as the beloved community. There's this work that we need to do internally. You don't have to have become to resolve all of this before moving to steps 2 and 3. They can go back and forth and interchange, but step 1 is vital. I just strongly encourage you not to ignore step 1. So step 2, listen. It is important for you to listen. And listen with an attitude of understanding and not an attitude of arguing. I don't really quite understand why there are some in our society that feel that if you don't agree, then there's no way that you can communicate. And again, that gets back to my curiosity and my insatiable inquisitiveness. I don't always feel like I have to agree with everything that someone else says, but I want to understand. I want to understand. And I sure would love for them to understand me and to respect me enough that they're willing to listen. So this listening gets to the point of, but listening to someone who's different. Don't just listen to the people that you already know agree with you 100%. Don't just listen to the people that are just like you. Listen across differences. Then select one step, just one action, and then move forward with that. And that could be reading a book about differences. That could be getting to know your neighbor or coworker on a more personal level that goes beyond good morning, how are you, goodbye. That could be reading an article about differences. There's a myriad of opportunities out there that you can take a part in and really begin to move forward. I know that so many of us were all on different levels and different paths entry into this, and that's fine. So choose the one that is most comfortable for you now and take that step and move forward. Let's just talk a moment about comfort. This reflection and this listening across differences is going to be uncomfortable. That's okay. It's within that sphere of uncomfort and discomfort where we grow. It's within that realm where we become a bigger, broader personality. Our world expands. And that's a good thing. That is a good thing. It is in that point where I'm doing that, you're doing that, where we become we the people. And we begin to build that future. We begin to create that future that we want for ourselves, our children, and our grandchildren. Thanks for joining us. Again, my name is Robert Martin, and I hope you stick around. I'm going to be live in a few moments for a robust conversation and interacting back and forth, and I'm looking forward to it. Thank you.